All right, we're going to talk through taxes and just a little bit about paychecks and um, cover some different components of taxes. So, starting off, Americans pay different kinds of taxes: income tax, sales tax, and more. Um, so, this first question: what do you think are the top three categories the government spends our tax dollars on? So, go ahead and answer that question right now. Okay, let's take a look. This is from 2014, this chart, and we have some percentages down here. So our largest percentage, 36%, is being spent on Social Security and welfare. So those are tax dollars that are collected from the government that then go to help people who are retired, um, that collect Social Security. Um, those can be people that have reached a certain age. That can be people who have certain can meet certain conditions, either disability or someone may have passed away, and the family can receive Social Security. It's money to help provide and support people that may have a hard time providing for and or supporting themselves, as well as welfare. Healthcare is another huge area where we spend the next largest percent, 27% is spent on healthcare, and then 22% spent on defense. As you can see, education, 3%, transportation, 3%, interest on debt is 6%. So when the government is in debt, they borrow money from other places, other governments, blah, blah, blah. They have to pay interest for borrowing that money, same way that we do. So 6% of spending goes toward interest, and then 3% on others. There's no balance or surplus included in this chart here. All right, let's take a look at just a general pay stub that I found an example online. And when we take a look at our pay stub, it's going to have the company and their address. It will have your name, social security number, employee ID, what check number this is, the pay period. So this is a weekly paycheck, and the pay date. And we will see here gross wages. So gross wages is taken by calculating your rate times your hours to get the total. So this person earns $24 an hour. That's the rate. 40 hours worked within this pay period. And that's multiplied up to give the current total of $960. A gross wage is the money before there's any deductions. So it grosses you out because you feel sick after seeing what you're actually going to take home. So your gross wage is the money before any of the deductions are taken out. Let's take a look at the deductions. Over here, there's, and there may be additional deductions based on the employer. This is just a sample. But we have our FICA med tax, Social Security tax. So both of these taxes are special taxes that are taken out that go toward Medicare and Social Security. As you pay into them, they go specifically toward this chunk here. And then there's federal tax withheld. There may also be state tax withheld. There may be, if you're part of a union, there might be union dues, or if you're paying into some kind of insurance. But there are a lot of deductions here that are not listed that could be potential deductions. Based on this, the current total for this pay period is $187.60. And then the year to date is a rolling like number. So it would compound, it would continue to increase because this is the pay period between the first week of January, it doesn't increase. But the following week, your current total would be, whatever the current total is, and then the year to date would be last week's plus this week's, and it just continues to increase. So it just shows you how much you've paid over the entire year versus what you've paid in for just this single pay period. Kind of the same thing here. The year to date will keep track of what you've made overall, what you've deducted overall, what you've been paid overall. Because this pay period is beginning of January, there's no rolling pay here. So your net pay is calculated by taking your current total, that's your gross wage, subtracting your deductions, and that's how you get your net pay. And that's what you're actually taking home. So even though you're earning this much money, there's an amount deducted, and this is the amount you have to work with at the end of the month. Okay? And this is what a pay stub might look like. This is direct deposit. So, in your own words, why do we pay taxes? Think back to this piece right here. Why do we pay taxes? Okay. Second question. What are 2 deductions that you will see on your pay stub? I'll go back up here. What are 2 deductions that you might see on your pay stub? I listed a bunch of different things. There's some right there. So answer that question now. Okay. And distinguish between net pay and gross pay. What's the difference between net pay and gross pay? All right. We're just going to talk through these questions. You're not going to have to answer them. What is the day of the year that is the deadline to file taxes? So the deadline to file taxes is April 15th. And that's the deadline to file the taxes from the year before. So a lot of people start, kind of in, I think, because you get a W-2, which is a tax form we'll talk about in just a moment, from your employer around January, and then you use that to file your taxes, and the due date is April 15th. The government organization that collects taxes is the Internal Revenue Service. It is the IRS. Okay, at what age do you have to be to start paying taxes, or at what age do you have to start paying taxes? This is kind of a trick question. If you've ever bought anything from a store, you paid a sales tax. So it doesn't really matter how old you are for paying sales tax. But in terms of paying income tax, it also doesn't matter how old you are. You pay income tax when you make an income. And you may be exempt based on when you do your taxes and how much money you actually made. You may be exempt, but if you're making an income, you're expected to pay income tax. What determines the amount of income tax that a person pays? That's based on our tax system. We're not going to get into it in this video, but possibly in the upcoming videos here, we'll talk about our tax systems and how that determines the amount of income tax that a person pays. And then what does the term withholding mean? Withholding is how much is held from your paycheck and sent to the government. So here's the idea. This federal tax, and we're going to talk about it actually in our next piece here on the W-4. The W-4, so let's say you get a job at Target. Target's going to give you some paperwork to fill out, and one of those forms is a W-4, and you would fill this out for anywhere where you're employed, that legally employed. So if you're, mowing lawns for your neighbor's probably not going to hand you a W-4. But if you earn enough money, you're expected to pay taxes on that money. I believe it's $3,000 or so, something like that. But for like any kind of regular job that you would get, you're going to fill out a W-4. It determines how much income tax to withhold from your pay. So as the number of allowances increases, the amount of federal income tax withheld decreases. So if you put 0, so line 5, which is right here, total number of allowances, and there's like a little worksheet, but if your total number of allowances is 0, they are going to withhold the most amount. If you put a 9, they're going to withhold the least amount. And it's scaled in between. So the idea is to help you figure out how much should be taken from your taxes. So here's the idea, and it is a very confusing system. So if you're feeling confused about this, it is a confusing system. The amount withheld is used to pay taxes that you owe. If you don't have enough money withheld, you will have to pay more. If you have too much money withheld, you will receive a refund, and that's that tax refund word that you might hear during tax season. You're waiting for your refund. So here's what a W-4 looks like. You fill it out with your first name, middle initial, last name, your social security number, your address. This would be your filing status, single, married, or married but withhold at a higher single rate. City or town and zip code, and then if your last name is different than your social security card, to check that box. Total amount of allowances. So that's how much you would want withheld from your paycheck. And there's usually, like on the back of this form, there's a worksheet that helps you figure out how much you should withhold. Talk to a trusted adult if you're unsure. And any additional amount that you would like withheld, you can designate a dollar amount. I would also like $200 each paycheck or $25 each paycheck withheld to go toward my taxes. Last year, let's see, I claim exemption from withholding 2019 and certify that I meet both conditions. So if there was no tax liability or you received all, that would be any kind of exemptions, like you're not going to make enough, or you expect to have no tax liability. You can write exempt here, and what happens is that they will take no money from your pay stub. Right here, the federal tax would be 0. They're just not going to take that money out if you claim that. You have to be really sure that that's the case, or else you're going to end up having to pay, and you may not have like the full amount, and you may not have saved that up. Down here you have a spot to sign, and then the employer completes these boxes here. Okay, so that's a W-4. It's for your employer. They give it to you, but it's for your employer so that they know how much money from your paycheck to send to the government for taxes, for tax purposes. Okay? A W-2 is given to you each year by your employer. So a W-2 goes to you. It's used to tell how much you've earned and how much was withheld. And this is the main document that you refer to when you're filing taxes. So you're going to have your employee, it's going to have your social security number on it. It will have your an employee identification. It's going to have this information, your name, address, zip code. And over here, these are kind of the important boxes that you use. It's going to tell you how much money you made total, how much was withheld total, how much was withheld for Social Security, or how much you made that can be applied to Social Security, how much was withheld, how much you made that can be applied to Medicare, how much was withheld, Social Security tips, allocated tips, those are things withheld, dependent care benefits, and then some different things if you were have a retirement or third-party sick pay, some different things going on here, depending on kind of your employer and what that status looks like going on. It's going to talk about state wages, state income tax, local income tax. So this is like just the driving document of how much you made and how much you paid in taxes for the year. That's essentially what a W-2 is. And you use that to fill out a 1040 most of the time. So the tax form, the 1040 tax form, you take the information from here and you use it to fill out your tax form here. It helps you organize how much you owe, any deductions you can make, and the amount you paid through withholding. So this determines if you receive a refund or if you need to pay more. It's submitted along with your W-2 that we just looked at, and you can fill out, handwrite a physical form. You can fill it out for free online and file it, or you can pay someone to fill it out and have them file it for you. There are several other forms you may need to fill out in order to determine additional taxes you may owe or deductions you can make. And then you use those numbers on the 1040. So the 1040 is kind of the main document, and there are other forms that help you figure out if you have any deductions. So our tax system's really confusing. I think it's hard to do it justice in one video, talking about just these different pieces. And what we'll do in upcoming videos is talk more about like the tax system itself and how does it work, deductions, withholding, some of those things. The purpose of today's video is to just kind of give you an overview of some of the things that go into paying taxes. So you get a pay stub. Your pay stub talks about how much you made, how much you paid. Before you get a pay stub, you fill out a W-4. You could do this, I believe, every month. It would be really annoying for your people, your human resources or whatever people at your job, but you can change this throughout the year if you need to adjust it. Most people just kind of, they fill it out and they leave it. But you could adjust that. Your W-4, so this is how much is taken out of your paycheck. Your W-2 is at the end of the year. It gives you your totals for everything, and you use that on a 1040. It's a lot. I get that. So we're going to go over more of taxes, the systems, brackets, all those things in later videos. But hopefully you understand that you fill out a W-4 for your employer. It tells them how much to take out of your paycheck every pay period. And then at the end of the year, you get a W-2, which gives you your total amounts, and you use those totals to file your taxes using a 1040.